The following is a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.
Crossed Flags, a racing podcast. It's your midweek fix for racing news and information. Brought to you by the Championship Racing Network. Now let's head trackside to join your hosts, Steve West and Matt Nicholson.
Welcome to the latest edition of Cross Flags, a podcast, racing podcast, all from the guys from the Championship Racing Network. We appreciate you guys coming in and checking us out here. Yeah, we're a day early. And there's a reason why. That guy right there has a trip, so we wanted to make sure that we were able to do that, and our producer, Molly, was able to adjust to our schedule, so we appreciate that very much. We're going to bring her in the second half of this and talk about a little bit of our past, because a few of you guys have been kind of wondering about, what are your credentials? Why in the world are you guys doing a racing podcast? We'll try and fill you in a little bit on that. But first things first, we want to talk about pretty much what everybody's been talking about, and that was Saturday when Joey Gase decided to throw his rear bumper cover.
That's part one.
That's part one.
That's part one.
Actually, it wasn't what we really planned on talking about, but I just couldn't resist talking about it for just a split second, because we've seen a lot of drivers get mad, especially at short tracks, Richmond, Bristol, Martinsville, sometimes road courses. And they'll ultimately end up throwing something at another driver because of something that they feel like was stupid and got slighted. But I've never seen anybody rip off the rear bumper cover of their car and throw it onto the hood. That was a new one.
Yeah, that was a new one. Well, and partly because, the rear clip was sitting in his back pocket after he hit the wall. It was probably easy to do, but that one was definitely a first.
Was it the best one that you've seen, though?
No.
Yeah.
Nah, Not even close.
And your best one is?
Best one I've ever seen is going to be Bristol when Tony Stewart threw his helmet at Matt Kenseth in basically a tomahawk heave-ho, I'm not going to miss you throw.
No. And he did plant his helmet dead center into the front of Matt Kenseth's car as they was going down pit road. I mean, it was a dead-on shot. And what a coincidence that I'm wearing a Tony Stewart shirt today. Actually, that was a coincidence. It wasn't planned out. But yeah, that one would be one of the best. I've seen a couple of other drivers take and throw helmets and hit the window net. Here's the thing. You're not going to do anything by hitting the window net. I mean, no, you just kind of look at it, and the driver's sitting in there in the car and going, okay, you hit the window net. Congratulations. But the second one is probably the more important one. And Sunday, it's a fairly recent development for NASCAR to go racing on Easter Sunday. Used to be that they took it off for the most part.
This was the third year in a row they've done it.
But here's the thing, and it's not the worst thing in the world, because knowing that for the vast majority of us, Monday becomes the recognized holiday, they ran it in the evening. A little bit late for me to be able to watch the whole thing, but you stayed up and watched the whole thing.
I did.
And I had my phone muted, so he sent me a text and said, Denny Hamlin won, NASCAR blew the call. Okay, this ought to be interesting. Mm-hmm. So I get my phone out a little bit later on, and this is the size of the phone, okay? Not exactly what anyone would call huge. And I watch what he's referring to, and he's referring to the final restart.
The overtime restart.
397 of 400 laps, we get a crash, and everybody comes running down pit road because it had been, 65, 70 laps?
It was at least that. Least that.
Since they had a pit stop. So they all come running down, get fresh tires and all the stuff that they're looking for. Maybe a little splash of gas, because we don't know how many more restarts that we might get. And Denny Hamlin's 11 team gets him off of pit road first, beating out the guy who was leading when the caution was shown, and that was Martin Truex Jr.
Solid pit stop. Very solid.
Coming off of turn number 4, there's that telltale little area on the track that is denoted by one red mark on the inside and outside wall and 2 red marks at the other end of it. In the middle is a big blue area with the words Geico painted on it, and that's the restart zone. You are, as the control car, in this case Denny Hamlin, supposed to wait until you get to that red point, that red line, before you take off. You can take off anywhere in between those 2 red marks that are on the wall. Doesn't matter. You can start right when you hit the first one. You can wait until just before you get to the double red ones at the very end of it. That's up to you. You're the control car.
You got the white line across the track, too.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that are denoting where that restart zone is.
Yeah.
But yet, even on this little itty bitty screen, I noted exactly what he noted. And we'd show you video, but we don't have the rights to it. So we're not going to show you video here. And doing a still shot wouldn't do it justice. So we're just going to describe it to you. Denny Hamlin jumped the restart. There's no doubt about it. Denny Hamlin jumped that restart. I saw it on the very first replay on a small screen. Elton Sawyer, NASCAR's senior VP of competition, said after the race, and I'm going to get the quote right here, quote, "We reviewed that. We looked at it. Obviously, the 11 was the control vehicle. It was awful close, but we deemed it to be a good restart." How? You've got all that technology, and we know this because we have been up in the PA tower of a number of different tracks where we know what NASCAR has available to them.
Yep.
And they've got a bunch of these screens with a whole bunch of camera angles.
Yeah.
They've got all the camera angles that Fox or NBC have, and maybe a couple more. Truth be told.
They've even got still shot. They've got still shot camera angles to where it's pointed to the restart zone, identically in the same way that they had the cameras in the S's at COTA last week.
Mm-hmm.
So you cannot tell me that there was not a good enough angle to see that. That's garbage.
Yeah.
He and I have been in that very booth at Richmond Raceway. Where the booth is, specific area of the booth we are at, is a perfect angle of sight, perfect line of sight, however you want to call it, at that restart zone.
Yep. Yeah, Richmond's kind of a little bit unusual when it comes to how it's set up. The guys from Fox Sports or NBC later in the year, MRN, which is the radio company that calls the races at Richmond, they're more start-finish line, over the start-finish line. The PA booth is all the way over here at the end, like he said, right above turn 4, coming off of turn 4, right above the restart zone, which would have been a perfect shot for us if we had been back there like we were in 2019.
Like we should have been. Did I say that out loud?
You did. And I appreciate it, actually.
I would say that the PA booth at Richmond versus where he was talking about their location is maybe 200 feet, give or take.
Maybe. Would have been a perfect shot, though, to see that start-finish line, and we could have sat there and said that was early.
No disrespect to the legendary musicians, but Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles could have seen that was a jump. How can you say that is not a jump? The lines are on the track, and the rule's not gray. The rule is black and white.
That it is.
It's clear black and white. Me personally, in my dirt racing career, I've been called 3 times in 10 years on a restart violation where I thought I had it timed and just trying to use the distance of my car to judge where I'm at the line. Now, dirt racing, you don't have lines on the track. You go by cones. Or you go by, the flagman goes by a visual imaginary line.
Okay.
Typically what in dirt racing, what they will tell you, now if you're not running a series race, if you're running a normal weekly show at any given track, what they're going to tell you is their exact words, leader fires at any point out of dead center of turn 3 and 4 or the exit of turn 4. Fire, for those that don't know, firing off means launching, taking the green, you're starting the race.
Hit the loud pedal, whatever you want to call it.
Hit the pedal, whatever you want to call it. Now, I've been in situations where I run at a track that leaders can get a running start and fire out of turn 2. We overturned that quick.
I bet.
That was the most. We tore up more cars and tore up equipment that needed to be torn up. But back to the point here. It's a black and white rule, especially when you have lines on the track, lines on the wall, and you've got a big blue box that is now painted with a fluorescent paint, tape, whatever you want to call it, on top of it.
And sponsored.
And sponsored. Let's do that. But the more they're opening their mouth, the more they're driving their foot in their mouth.
And that brings us to this morning. as we record this edition on Tuesday, to be more specific, in case you're watching it on any other day. Elton Sawyer made his weekly appearance on SiriusXM Satellite Radio's NASCAR channel. He went further when he was asked again about this situation, and he said, quote, "It's a bang-bang call." This is how he started, and then he goes on. "As we had the opportunity to look Sunday night as well as multiple times yesterday," talking obviously about Monday, "first and foremost, the 11 is the control vehicle." All right. You noted that on Sunday night. We all noted that. You're correct.
Yep.
We all agree. We stipulate to that. Here's where it starts to get a little weirder. Foremost, the 11 is the control vehicle. They had earned the right to be in that position. They won the battle off of pit road. They put themselves in a position to be in control at the restart. Okay, great. Then he gets into the more controversial side of it. As I looked at it yesterday, again, multiple times, there's no doubt he rolled early. Again, it's a bang-bang call. It's at the end of the race. We're a live sporting event. We don't have the luxury of a timeout and go to the sideline and review it and make that call. If this happens at lap 10 or 50 or 300, the call would have been different. I'm going to come back to that. If I'm a competitor, I wouldn't be playing that game every week. Sometimes you get that call, sometimes you don't. If this happens at lap 10 or 50 or 300, the call would have been different.
All right, I'm gonna play the role of a television official that is used on broadcast that would make calls, basketball and football. I'm gonna play Gene Steratore here. I'm throwing every flag that I can on the play on that one.
Yeah, this goes back to a conversation that you and I had on the Saturday show.
Yeah.
In that there's a rule about locking bumpers at tracks like a Talladega and places like that.
Mm-hmm.
In that, don't do that in the corners.
Right.
You want to know why you don't do that in the corners at a Daytona or a Talladega or now, really, for the most part, Atlanta?
Wreck.
If I'm on the back of his bumper and I'm locked into it at approaching 200 miles per hour with all the wind buffeting those cars, he's moving around from side to side, I'm moving around from side to side. All it's going to take is one little slip and he's up into the wall, taking out half to 3/4 of the field.
Especially if we were on the top and we got a bottom lane moving.
That rule doesn't change, technically, on the white flag or last lap. Although we have seen guys push it, they do get called and they back off. Why, if this is a rule in a sponsored area of the track, specifically one of your primary sponsors, premier level sponsors at that, they have sponsored a specific area that is fully, purely, highly marked and delineated on that track. Why all of a sudden is it with 2 laps to go on a green, white, checkered restart something that you're not going to call, but you'd call it on lap 10 or 50 or 300?
He and I both have seen this exact scenario numerous times at that little place that sets off exit 168 on I-20 East headed back towards Atlanta, the little place called Talladega. How many times have they that fast called a penalty on somebody going below the yellow line?
Very often.
Very quick.
Yep, they are fast to do it. And rightfully so. It is told in the driver's meeting every single race. Doesn't matter whether it's your first time at Talladega or you've been there 50 times. They will tell you in the driver's meeting, the double yellow line is out of bounds.
How fast were they to call somebody of track limits last week when they're that far off of the black pavement?
Over the 3 series, 41 times.
Very quick. So you can't tell me that you can't immediately, those laps at Richmond, they were running 22 to 23 second laps. So you mean to tell me with a set of eyes, multiple sets of eyes, you can't look at that screen and go, restart violation?
Yep. Recall it, re-rack them, and restart it.
Nope. If it would have been me or him, we'd have been tailing the lead lap and we'd have been trying to climb the fence going to the tower.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, we would have. And here's the other side of it. and following people as you do on social media, follow Bob Pockrass. Bob Pockrass is one of the most well-known people in and around the NASCAR media circles, okay? And he said, he basically said something that you and I have said many, many times. Why'd they throw a caution at whatever point it was? It doesn't matter what point it was. He was asking why they threw a caution so fast. These guys are throwing cautions for no real reason whatsoever, but in this case, they're going to swallow the flag?
Trigger finger. Pushing the button. They'll get happy with that. Oh, but we're going to let that go. Give me a break.
Yeah.
And I told you I was going to surprise you with this one right here.
Come on. Let's go.
Now, the main two figureheads for the last few years that have been the spokesmen that speak, that basically the main official's dummy that goes out and speaks in front of the reporters, they'll let them take the beating. Scott Miller, Elton Sawyer. What do those two, and this right here will probably make Molly perk up when I say this.
Okay.
What do those two and Jawan Howard, Jerry Stackhouse, and I would dare say put Penny Hardaway in there too.
Oh, this ought to be good.
People that had successful, and I put successful professional careers that have very lackluster, if not failed, coaching careers. I would put officials in this series and coaching in a similar zone.
Okay. I see where you're going with that.
This is getting pathetic. This is getting very pathetic. There's no excuse to every time you open your mouth in front of a media, radio, television, or even to a digital reporter, that you should be putting your foot deeper down your throat every time you talk. Because they're hanging their own neck. That's basically they're scapegoating.
And the thing that I think that we just need to get settled down, we need to get locked down when it comes to the rules, it's consistency.
Thank you.
We've asked for transparency before, and it seems like grudgingly we're starting to get it. Now it's consistency, and it's a severe lack of it. It's a rule. It's a hard and fast rule. And in this case, you have, again, that area clearly marked at every racetrack we go to and sponsored by one of your premier sponsors. He either restarts in that zone, or he fired early, or he fired late. There's no, it's a close call, we'll let it go.
If you get to those double lines, flagman then has the discretion to start the race. If you're going to start late in the box, is what it's called. You get to line one, that's called starting early in the box. Before the line, restart violation. It's black and white. Simply put, no other question about it.
Got to be more consistent. And this is, we're nailing NASCAR on this one, and rightfully so. But the same goes for IndyCar or Formula One or Formula E or anybody else. The NHRA is not going to look at a red light violation and go, well, it was really, really close, so we'll let the driver get the win anyway. No.
Nope.
Red light's a red light.
0.0001, there's a red light. Seriously.
Red light's a red light, boys and girls, and that's it. Denny Hamlin went early. Now, it benefited me in our fantasy league, but, you know, in real life, sorry, that's not the way that's supposed to go.
This is the last thing I'll say on it because I feel my blood pressure rising up about it because this is irritating me to no end. On the way over here, I heard a quote from Joey Logano on his interview he did with SiriusXM.
Mm-hmm. I've heard the same interview.
If I get called for that the next race or beyond and I get black flagged, the rated G version of it, I'm mad.
Mm-hmm. He's going to be pissed. I'll put it right out there. He's going to be pissed, and rightfully so.
Absolutely.
Consistency, NASCAR. That's what everyone's now calling for. So here's the deal. You've set another precedent, just like what we talked about last week.
Bingo.
You had a precedent before when it came to certain road courses about a stop-and-go penalty. Why was it a 30-second drive-through? Why was the penalty a 30-second penalty, effectively, where you had to drive through pit road because you overdrove track limits? Now you've set a new precedent. Denny Hamlin was allowed to get the win. If they go to Martinsville this weekend, and whether it's Denny Hamlin or any of the other, however many other drivers they're going to be entered, I haven't seen the entry list yet.
37.
Okay. If it's any one of the 37 drivers that are entered at this weekend's race at Martinsville for the Cookout 400 on Saturday night. No, I'm sorry. Cup Series race is Sunday. It's Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, that's right.
If any of them do the exact same thing, you've set the precedent. So if you're going to call off the restart or you're going to black flag the driver for having kicked it off, you want to know why? It's because you're being hypocrites. You better tell them in the driver's meeting and in the driver's meeting for the Xfinity Series race for Saturday night and for the Craftsman Truck Series on Friday night.
Same thing.
If you're going to now suddenly pay a heck of a lot more attention to that Geico restart zone because of what happened in Richmond this past weekend, you better tell them we're going to be policing it that much harder. But if you don't tell them that and somebody happens to fire just a little early,
that's not on them.
You better let it go.
That's not on them.
Because you set the precedent.
Yep.
Now, we're going to lighten things up just a little bit. And for this, we're going to bring our producer who is sometimes pictured in. And Molly is going to kind of bring in something of her resume as well. And we've talked about the education of young Molly, and this is one of her little opportunities for education here. She's talked about the fact that she wants to go to Talladega, so we're going to be working on getting her out to Talladega Superspeedway here, maybe for the spring race, certainly at one of the two races this year, if not both, so that you can see this place. But we've talked about the fact that, you know, I was born in 68. My interest in racing began literally by playing with Matchbox cars, Hot Wheels specifically. And that's how I became a Darrell Waltrip fan. And I remember watching the 1979 Daytona 500, that famed one where the East Coast got socked in from a blizzard well before Molly was born. And we had nothing better to do. And all of a sudden, on the very few channels that were out there, here's this thing called Daytona, the Daytona 500. Okay, let's check this out. Not only was it a great race, we had a fun fight at the end between the Allison brothers and Cale Yarborough. I became a NASCAR fan at that point in time. Loved it. The fact that I was able to, later on in my life, have the opportunity to get into this business that I really started to love right about the same time as my interest in NASCAR picked up, and then turn around and be able to go and, for example, in the year 2000, I was a PA announcer for the Birmingham Barons. 2001, the very next year, they asked me to come out to the historic Birmingham International Raceway and be one of the track announcers out there with the late, great Dave McDaniel. No thanks to Larry Langford, that historic track is now gone after 97 years of racing and having a whole bunch of well-known names, NASCAR Hall of Famers, who won at that track. I'm not just talking about the Alabama gang. Yeah, the Alabama gang won a lot out there between Red Farmer, Bobby and Donnie Allison, Neil Bonnet, a whole lot of those guys. But Richard Petty won out there, Darrell Waltrip won out there. You name it, who's who of NASCAR going back into the 60s and early 70s. They all won at Birmingham International Raceway. And Larry Langford, with a cat ate the canary grin that I'd like to smack off of his face, he took a wrecking ball to it. But it was during that time that Matt Coulter, who's our trackside announcer at Talladega Superspeedway, asked if I could come and fill in. And later on, that led to me being the PA announcer out at Talladega. And that led to a couple of other pretty interesting opportunities. In 2018, had the opportunity to be PA at Darlington. So I did that in 2018 and 2019. 2019, they needed to fill in at Richmond for the fall race. So Matt and I went to Richmond and had a good time up there. And later on in 2019, had the chance to go to Homestead, Miami, and I was in the PA booth for Ford Championship Weekend.
When we literally were thinking, oh, this is going to be 2020 when we get to do this.
Stupid
no, you're
COVID.
going in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then stupid COVID hit.
Yeah.
That's another story altogether. We'll tell you that at a later date.
Right.
But either way, we've had the opportunity to go and be in the PA booth at these tracks, and we've had the chance to go to some other tracks. Molly, you've said, haven't had the opportunity to be able to go to a racetrack yet.
Not yet.
But you've had the opportunity. You went to the University of Nebraska.
Mm-hmm. Go Big Red.
There you go. With that opportunity, what did you do while you were at the University of Nebraska other than study, which I hope you did?
A little bit of that. A little bit of that.
Okay.
So I went to school there all 4 years, never transferred. Because, you know, when you go from the South to Nebraska, my most commonly asked question is why? And I always would love to tell people, well, I haven't transferred yet.
Okay.
So I stayed in one place because I loved it. But while in Nebraska, obviously, I studied sports broadcasting, and I was also part of the dance team at Nebraska.
Okay.
So we were there for every football, basketball, baseball, softball. Sometimes we would do wrestling. Pretty much just any event that not only really the university had, but the state had, because we are the flagship school for the state.
Okay. And this allowed you to do some traveling along with those teams, I would presume.
Yeah, it was kind of hard just because of COVID. I went to college during COVID, so some of that kind of, we didn't really get to do a lot of that, but my best travel experience was Ireland.
Ooh.
So in 2022, Nebraska and Northwestern kicked off in the Aer Lingus College Football Classic in Dublin, Ireland, and it was played at the Aviva Stadium, which is where normally there's like rugby there, soccer or football matches, as they call it over there.
Yeah, we call it soccer.
Exactly. We call it soccer. Yeah. But it was week 0 of the college football season, and Nebraska lost that game. It was Northwestern, their only win of the season. They went 1-11 that year, and it was to Nebraska. But regardless, it was one of the best experiences ever. Not very many people can say they went to a college football game in Ireland.
I would agree. What are some of the other places that you went to?
I've been to Indianapolis a few times, mainly for Big Ten basketball tournaments.
Okay.
So I think it's called Gamebridge Fieldhouse, where the Pacers play. Been there a few times. As for football, the only places I really got to go were Ireland and then Madison, Wisconsin. Just because, again, I was supposed to travel my sophomore year, but with COVID, we weren't allowed to. They didn't even allow fans to be in the stands unless you were very close friends or family. But Madison, Wisconsin, Camp Randall is a really cool stadium. And Alabama actually plays Wisconsin this year in Madison. And I've been saying, if you are an Alabama fan and you have the chance to go, you have to go. Madison is such a fun college town.
Yep. Okay. So you get to some places and you start to kind of look around and you start to kind of get a feel for that place and you start to understand, the aura of the place, if not an overt history of it necessarily, right? I mean, there are certain places within the college football world that you probably would love to go to because there is a history there. Like where?
See, for me, I would love to go to Notre Dame. And I've been to Notre Dame before, but I've never been to a game.
Right.
Like, I've been to the stadium and I've seen, Touchdown Jesus in the background, but I would love to experience a game there. And there's a couple of other just, like, rivalries in general, like, obviously the Iron Bowl. I grew up in Alabama, but I've never been to the Iron Bowl. Mainly because my mom's an Auburn fan and my dad's an Alabama fan. So that's probably never going to happen as long as I'm with them.
Civil War in Molly's household.
It literally is. And then as a Big Ten graduate, Penn State whiteout game, Beaver Stadium. That's one thing that I've always wanted to do as well. Because, you see the environment on TV, but actually being there, totally different.
Yeah. And I can pretty much say the same thing. You think about some of the stadiums that are out there. She mentioned University, Notre Dame, Rose Bowl.
Yeah, that's a big one.
LA Coliseum would obviously be huge because of not just the amount of football that's been played there, but all of the sports that have gone on there. I mean, heck, it was a host of 2 Olympics. So there are a lot of places that are like that, and the racing world is no different. And I'm not trying to put Talladega down by any stretch of the imagination because there is a history there. But what you find, and I hope I'm here to see this because I want to go in the infield with Molly and then stand like in the middle of the infield and let her just try and get a scope of how big that place is.
I have driven by it. One of my best friends lives in
Atlanta.
Atlanta.
Doesn't tell you the same thing. I'll tell you that right now. It does not tell you the same thing.
But I've driven right through Talladega plenty of times.
So I want to be with her when she's in the infield so that she gets kind of the whole viewpoint.
I've got one even better.
All right, go for it.
Anytime now that they come up and they do a charity track drive, take her. You get the infield, stand in the middle, and you get on the track.
You and I will talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
Because, and again, I've been doing Talladega, PA since 2007, but I had never really had the chance to get on the track until a few years ago.
Right.
And you're always sitting there wondering because that the banking in turns 1 and 2 and the banking in turns 3 and 4 is 33 degrees. Do I have the guts to actually do this? And what's it going to be like? And I can tell you this right now. I'll give you this hint. If you go in your car during a track weekend, they'll get you up to, give or take, about 100 miles an hour. And it's controlled with a safety car in front, safety car in the back. So no, you can't go wild and do however fast you think your car can get away with.
Yeah.
As you get up to speed on your first lap, you're actually counter turning. While the track is going to the left, you're turning to the right when you're up on that banking because the weight of the car and gravity wants to pull you down. You get up to about 90, your car will track around the track without you having to turn the steering wheel at all.
Yep.
That's cool.
And then you turn around and do a driving experience there where we just did the base, and Matt and I both did it, and we were governed to about 150 miles an hour. And after the first time, when you do it and you go, do I have the guts to do this? Do I have the guts to do? Oh, this is cool. And you get that feeling. So I want to be there when you experience that.
Okay.
But you're awed by just the size, the immensity of a Talladega or a Daytona, for that matter. Although there's a history at Daytona, and it was very hard for me not to look over to that spot where we knew Dale Earnhardt hit the wall.
Absolutely.
And lost his life back in 2001. Hard to believe that's 23 years ago now. But there are other tracks that just have an innate history to it. And when we went to Darlington, and Darlington was one of the first tracks that NASCAR ever ran on. It's been there pretty much the entire history of it. We walked into Darlington and started looking around and walked through the tunnel to go from the infield to get to the PA booth, because you have to actually go to the outside of the track to get to the PA booth there. But you can do it by walking, and there's a tunnel that goes up underneath just before it goes into turn 1. And it's lined with a mural on both sides of the wall, and it shows a picture of every single driver who won any particular race in any particular year and denotes who the driver is and what year it was. And you can't help it. You just feel history start to smack you in the face in a good way. Darlington was the first one of the NASCAR tracks for me that actually really did that. Richmond has a pretty rich history, but it's not the same. Homestead Miami's way too new. It was a cool experience.
Yeah, I agree.
Not taking anything away from Richmond or Homestead Miami, but it's different. Darlington has such a rich history. After that first Darlington race, you and I went and we checked out the old Rockingham Speedway.
Yeah, we did. We figured out it was about probably hour and a half, give or take, northwest of Darlington. And we're like, well, we'll go here and bypass through Charlotte, go hit the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Sure, let's go. So you're driving down the little two-lane country road like you would see here in rural Alabama. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you see a clearing, racetrack sitting in the middle of a field. You're like, okay.
That's cool.
I said, all right, so how are we going to get in here? We're here, we're going.
Yeah, we're going to take a look at it as much as we can.
We found a gate that we was able to pull right up to, and we probably had to walk maybe 300 yards.
Maybe not even that.
I'd say 300, give or take. You could walk right up to the edge of the racetrack. The back gate was open, and you could just stand there and look. It's just,
It was one of those tracks where
that's all you could do is just,
nothing was going on.
Yeah.
But you could sit there and you could look at the speedway and you could picture and almost hear in your head the cars going around the track.
That's cool.
But the coolest experience that I ever had, and the first time I ever went there was 1996, and we were in Indianapolis. I was with a friend of mine. We were going out there for the Mopar Nationals, and it was all being held at Indianapolis Raceway Park. But he set us up in a hotel. We had driven out from, I was living in West Virginia at the time, and we had driven out from West Virginia, and he put us up in the old Speedway Motel. It's no longer there, unfortunately. Speedway Motel used to be effectively under the shadow of Turn 2 at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And we got there and had the opportunity, and we found that you could walk up to the fence. Couldn't go through it, but you could walk up to the fence and climb up, and you could look down the back straight at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Straight shot all the way down.
Mm-hmm.
Indianapolis Motor Speedway, even more so than Darlington, hit me over the head like a ton of bricks with the history of it because of what's gone on there. You know, and it had been around then for just shy of a century. It opened up in 1911.
I think so, yeah.
Going off the top of my head. The amount of things that have gone on there, and you can you can see the names and hear the names, the AJ Foyts, the Rick Mears, Mario Andretti's, all those names that you remember hearing from when you first got interested in racing all the way up to the current names. Indianapolis Motor Speedway had to be the coolest thing. And then the opportunity, and I'm actually wearing the shirt for the 2021 doubleheader weekend where NASCAR and IndyCar were put together on the road course in August of 2021. And to be able to go there and watch the racing. Well, the road course is a lot different. And in a lot of ways, it's kind of the lesser of the two than watching it on the full 2.5-mile rectangle. Because if you're sitting in the grandstand areas, there's really no good place for you to be able to sit in the grandstand and watch a race on the entire road course because it's just blocked by the pavilion and the paddock area and all that. But you're still sitting in the stands at Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Arguably the most iconic motorsports stadium in the world.
Yeah.
Arguably.
It's sitting up, and it doesn't matter whether you're in the nosebleed section watching USC, UCLA, or Notre Dame hosting whoever it is that they may be hosting on any particular weekend, or in the nosebleed section at either Jordan Hare or Bryant Denny Stadium watching the Iron Bowl. You're there watching one of the biggest, one of the best rivalries that's out there in such a historic place. It'd be like the Big House watching Ohio State and Michigan.
Or even the Horseshoe, yeah.
Or the Horseshoe.
They're both really cool.
You know? Mm-hmm. She would know. That was kind of our experience. And we've had the opportunity to go to, I couldn't even tell you how many other facilities we've gone to. Atlanta, Bristol being just among them.
I had a friend of mine the other day, his son. I took him last year to his first non-Talladega event at Nashville Superspeedway, and to see the look on a 13-year-old's face that's never been from me to him, from a truck or a car, and he's like this the entire time. He asked me the other day, he said, I forgot to ask you, he said, how many have you been to total? I said, I named every one of them. I said, and by the time I got to it, I said, actually 23, I've missed 2. And I told him, I said, well, wait a minute, I missed another one, 24. I said, there's 2 more if you count them. I said, technically 26. Mm-hmm. Whether it be I see a race at the place or just go to the place and just stand there and be on the grounds of it. Mm-hmm. Let's see, it's Talladega, Daytona, Charlotte, Atlanta, Homestead, Miami, Memphis, Nashville Fairgrounds, Bristol. Which is
also, by the way, another cool place to go. If you're interested in the history of it, Nashville Fairgrounds is a place that you need to go check out.
Bristol, Rockingham. I've been on the grounds of North Wilkesboro Speedway before they completely remodeled the place. Hickory, Five Flag Speedway in Pensacola, Darlington, Indianapolis, Kentucky, Mobile, Richmond, Texas, New Hampshire, Indianapolis Raceway Park, Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, and, of course, Barber. You got Eldora Speedway that's in Ohio as well. And then you've got, if you want to count the road course at Charlotte and the Daytona road course, that's 26 total.
Yeah. This is an opportunity. And this will, as we go on again, and we're able to bring her in on it a little bit more as well, this is the opportunity that we're basically saying. Don't just take going to a game for granted. I don't care whether you're going to Alabama, Auburn, UAB, Troy, South Alabama, Jacksonville State, North Alabama, Tennessee Titans, Atlanta Falcons, Birmingham Barons, Atlanta Braves, whatever it is, whatever sport, whatever team, or whatever series when it comes to racing. Don't take it for granted. Take it all in. Take the whole experience in. Even if it seems somewhat lackluster at the time. A couple of years ago, we went to a Thursday evening game, because we're both New England Patriots fans. We went to a Thursday evening game at the Georgia Dome, Mercedes Dome.
Mercedes-Benz Stadium, yeah.
You know, that one. You know, whatever name they've got it now.
Yeah, that one.
To watch the Falcons host the New England Patriots. This is an NFL game. We expect NFL games, especially when it's the only game. Thursday night game. It's a primetime game. We expect it to be sold out. Might have been 2/3 full. Might have been?
Yeah, I would say so. Probably 50,000 at least.
And about 2/3 of that 2/3 capacity
Patriots.
were wearing Patriots jerseys.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Atlanta fans, there's a reason why there was a bumper sticker. And I remember seeing this bumper sticker. This is before you were born and before she was born. But there used to be a bumper sticker on cars in Atlanta, and you would see them in and around Birmingham as well, that would say, "Go Braves," and take the Falcons with you.
I've seen that actual sticker. I've seen it.
I've never seen that.
Yeah. Atlanta, Atlanta's an interesting city. There's no doubt about it. But they don't seem to be that big of a sports city, strangely enough. And yeah, I'm going to call you out on it. You don't seem to be that big of a sports city. Don't take it for granted. Don't take it for granted, because it is an experience. Whatever sport it is, whatever racing series it is, whatever facility you're in, take it all in. Enjoy it. Because number one, you don't know if you're going to get to go again. And number two, you don't know what it is that you're going to see. It could be one of the coolest things you've ever seen in your life, and you didn't expect it.
I've started, you talking about that, I've started recently every track that we go to. What I'll do is, if we got the credentials to do so, which 99% of the time we do.
We have connections.
Well, just a little. I'll go out to the track and get on the track surface, and I'll just take my phone and set it straight up and down like this on the asphalt and snap a picture. I've started a little album of that to where I document everywhere I go. Mm-hmm. My most favorite one probably will be, hands down, and probably will never get touched, is when I was able to go to Indianapolis Motor Speedway and get on the yard of bricks. Because on our Saturday Saturday FM show, I always said, if I ever have the chance and have the opportunity to get on Indianapolis Motor Speedway, get to the yard of bricks, I want to just go sit on the yard of bricks and just listen.
Yep.
Listen to the wind talk. Mm-hmm. Because my great-grandfather always told me, if you sit somewhere quiet, the wind will tell you a story about where you're at.
Yep.
Luckily, when I was up there in 2022, I don't know how I got this to be perfectly timed. This had a track tour that I did at the Brickyard, and it was just me and one other guy there on a three train tram. That's what I call it. What they call it,
sure.
A train tram.
We can call it that.
And the older lady that was driving the truck, she said, "We'll be here about 15 minutes." I said, "I'm going to go just sit on the yard of bricks." She said, "You go right ahead, sweetheart." Sat there, and you could just listen to the wind tell you the story of all the laps turned around that place. Mm-hmm. That hit me so hard. It didn't throw a punch at you. It threw a left hook haymaker and TKO that quick, the way it hit me.
So I'm going to wrap this up by asking Molly first, then Matt, and then I'm going to give mine. And Molly, you can give me a couple. Okay. Ultimate, I want to go experience that stadium, park, racetrack, whatever it is, the one or two places that immediately come to mind that you would like to be able to get out there and be on the surface where they are actually contesting whatever it is.
See, mine might be a little bit different because my grandfather was an avid golfer.
Okay.
And before he passed away, he attended the Masters 47 years in a row.
I could see that.
Wow.
And so growing up, the Masters and just really any tour, really, any major was always a big deal in my family, especially the Masters, though, because, again, like I said, he went for almost 50 years.
Yeah, Augusta that's Valhalla for golf.
Exactly. So Augusta just means a lot in my family. And growing up, the food is pretty cheap at Augusta.
Oh, yeah.
And so he would always save his quarters up. And then he would just bring a whole bag of quarters with him. And so that's something that I've always wanted to do now, is just save up my quarters like my grandpa did and go visit Augusta.
I heard this, by the way, earlier this week. Apparently, you can buy like a bottle of water or a bottle of a Coke for $2.
Yep, you can.
You can't even do that at Talladega. And Talladega's got some pretty good prices, especially in Big Bill's garage. But that right there, that's cheap.
Yeah.
That's good pricing right there. Any place else?
I would say number 2 would probably be the Rose Bowl. And hopefully a Rose Bowl that Nebraska is maybe playing in one day. Just with, the pageantry and the parade and everything. Like, that's the epitome of college football. And college football has always been my favorite.
There you go. Matt?
I've been pretty fortunate, like as I read off just a minute ago, to be on the grounds of quite a few racetracks. But this is actually a 1A, 1B, 1C for me.
Okay.
1A is going to be in the racetrack category. I want to go to Le Mans, France.
Yeah.
Le Mans.
I can see that.
The 24 hours of Le Mans, because we've checked off the Rolex 24, which it took us a month to recover from it. But we did. We took it off. We checked it off. Secondly, Mira's one of her picks. I'm going to check off the Rose Bowl one day.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I don't care if I'm just at a normal regular season game. Auburn plays UCLA in a few years there.
Hint.
Or even if it is a Rose Bowl. Thirdly, this one's going to be a little bit different. I want to be on the field at Neyland Stadium when they run through the tee.
Oh, that would
That's
be cool.
a good one.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
I've seen the dog one time. That blue tick hound Smokey is the prettiest dog I've ever laid my eyes on. That dog is beautiful.
Yeah, I could see that. Mine, I'm going to choose one for racing. I'm going to choose one for football, and I'm going to choose one for baseball. And I've been to Fenway Park. Fenway Park is a cool place to go. But what I would like to do is kind of do what you did when it came to Indianapolis. I'd like to be able to go to Fenway Park and sit on or near the pitcher's mound when nobody's there and just listen. That would be the ultimate for me, is to do that at Fenway Park. I'd love to go to Lambeau Field.
Me too. My parents have been there, but I've never
Lambeau
been.
Field would be that's the NFL version of the ultimate.
It has to
And-
be a snowy game, though.
Oh, absolutely.
You got to be in the elements.
I don't want ice bowl. Snow, fine.
Snow is fine.
I don't want 16 below.
Yeah.
And the other one that I want to do is Martinsville. I have not been to Martinsville yet. That is on the bucket list. I got to do that, and I got to have a hot dog there. I keep hearing about these hot dogs. I got to have one.
You can have them. You can have them. I've seen what's on them. You can have them.
It's one of those things that you actually have to try. You know, everyone talks about the hot dogs at Martinsville. You got to try one. I'll try one. And Martinsville would be one of the coolest places. Richmond was my favorite track from very, very young. No, again, no disrespect to Talladega. I love being out there, but Richmond was my favorite track. For whatever reason, it was just that track that just caught my attention. And I loved being able to go out there and do that and experience Richmond. To go to Martinsville and do the entire experience.
Yep.
That'd be the way to go.
Absolutely.
Well, we've gone a little bit longer than usual, but you know what? We had a good time after being ticked off and throwing Elton Sawyer to the wind. We were able to go down memory lane and bring young Molly in on it. And again, can't wait to take you out to Talladega. And if we get the opportunity,
Okay.
and Saturdays happen to work, and they're going to do a drive-in, we'll have to meet up out there, and
Okay.
we'll take you around.
I'm excited.
Okay? All right. Thank you very much for checking us out here on this edition of Crossed Flags. Next week, I do believe we're back on Wednesday.
Yes.
At least that's the plan at this point in time. Y'all have a great one. We'll be back on Saturday for the 2-hour edition of the Championship Racing Network at 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central Time. Hope you join us then. And until then, we'll talk to you real soon on either Championship Racing Network or Crossed Flags.
You've been listening to Crossed Flags, a racing podcast. For more content like this, subscribe to CRN Live on YouTube, and you'll be set to catch the 2-hour live show every Saturday morning at 9 Eastern, 8 Central.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.